Okay, so hello everybody. Hello my fellow North Dakotans, and thank you all for being here for this evening. When I first announced my run for governor as the Democratic Nonpartisan League candidate in the winter, I had no idea what to expect, but I knew our economies and our communities were already fragile. Now, between the pandemic and the economic fallout, and the civil unrest around our nation and our state, this campaign has been an incredibly enlightening experience about North Dakotans and those that govern us. After hundreds of visits, my reasons for running for governor has reinforced my belief that North Dakotans share a unique spirit of collaboration, teamwork, and great pride in our culture and our state. We are more alike than different. North Dakota is receiving more than $1 billion with a B in COVID relief money through the CARES Act. This money is to be used prior to December, the end of December, for the relief of the negative impacts from COVID that's affecting our economies and our communities. Unfortunately, our current governor has been reluctant to work collaboratively in deciding how that money will best serve our state. He has refused to call an emergency legislative session, even after people on all sides of the political spectrum have been calling for one. Our legislature exists to represent the people. Right now, it's only 6 people that are deciding what to do with $1.2 billion. And 6 people simply do not represent the local needs of our large and diverse state. Tonight, my campaign organized a statewide listening session as an opportunity to come together and listen to our neighbors and to tell our elected leaders what we want and what we need in our communities. That's why I've invited you all to share with me your input on how you believe the money would best be used to help North Dakota navigate this crisis and help build a resiliency for the future. Just a few notes about tonight's sessions. If you signed up ahead of time to speak, we will work through our speakers list, and I will call you by name to share your remarks. Please try to keep your remarks to under 2 minutes. My campaign manager, Melissa, will let you know when the 2 minutes is up, and she'll ask you to wrap up your remarks in order to allow us to hear from as many people as possible. And to ensure that we are honoring everyone's time, Melissa might mute you if you go on a bit too long, which sometimes we go. 2 minutes goes fast. If you have further input, though, you can share that with via email at listeningtour@lensvigfornd.com, and you'll see that in the comments. And so we would like to have any extra input that you weren't able to share by the end of business tomorrow. This session will be recorded and streamed on Facebook. And we do have members of the media here, so your comments will be made public. Please use the chat box on Zoom to share your name and where you're from, and feel free to post questions or comments in there. We will do our best to respond to the comments and questions that come up. We will also take speakers after the speaking list is complete. If you indicate that you'd like to speak in the chat or use the raise the hand function found under the participants area. Again, Melissa will be moderating the time and will let you know when the 2 minutes is up. Please use this session to be open-minded and respectful for all our fellow North Dakotans. We will aim to wrap up after about an hour. And again, please send any feedback to listeningtour@lensvigfornd.com if you aren't able to share live tonight. I will be compiling what I hear and presenting it in writing to the governor and our legislatures, our representatives, in an effort to share community feedback with our elected representatives. I will also email that out to all the attendees who signed up via our website, and I hope you'll continue to advocate with me for more transparency and collaboration from our elected leaders. As a small business owner here in Dickinson, I feel the effects of COVID pandemic in my own community. And I am hearing stories every day of how the pandemic is affecting North Dakotans. In late March, I closed my vet clinic's doors and went to emergency service only because I wanted to keep my community and my staff safe. Since that time, we have started to safely reopen the clinic, but my business's bottom line has seen the impacts of the crisis. My heart goes out to all the business owners, nonprofit leaders, community members, and everyone who has been affected by COVID-19. The governor continues to refer the pandemic as an opportunity for innovation, but I know firsthand and from talking to the people like all of you that this pandemic has devastating impacts on our communities, our families, and our lives. I hope to learn more from you all about how the federal relief money can be put to use to help through this pandemic. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. And I think our first speaker will be Pat Hart.
Hello all, thanks for coming. Dr. Shelley and team, thanks for putting this together. My name is Patrick Hart and I'm running for state auditor in North Dakota. And like Dr. Shelley said, this money is it's simply too much money. It's moving too fast and it's being allocated by too few of people. This 6-person North Dakota Emergency Commission does not represent the constituents of North Dakota. Their meeting today, for example, happened behind closed doors. The backdoor dealing is not transparent, and this lack of accountability is really setting up state agencies who are given these federal pass-through funds, setting them up for potential failure. Federal dollars always come with strings attached, and proactively working with the auditor's office would help ensure compliance with the federal requirements. I absolutely legislative session, and we need to get more people to figure out how to best spend these monies. Thanks for having me, you guys. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you, Pat, for that. Our next speaker is Adriana Sethry. And we'll get you up here on speaker here.
Can you hear me?
Hi, we can see you and hear you. Welcome, Adriana.
Hi. Thank you for having me on. So my name is Adriana Sethry. I'm a registered nurse case manager with a home health program in Grand Forks, North Dakota. During this pandemic, I've been working as a case manager for our program. And we like to consider ourselves a pretty self-sufficient group.
Yep.
We are very good at planning ahead. We have things like weather, flooding, different things like that we work to make sure our staff and patients are safe. But with COVID-19, this was not something that we were prepared for at all, even as a health system. Never could we have imagined sending out our staff to homes with limited PPE. Never could we have imagined asking our staff to reuse disposable masks that are only good for an hour under the best of conditions. In a country that likes to pride itself on its ingenuity and the amount of resources that we have, we were grossly underprepared for a situation that we were warned about that was going to happen. It's my expectation that going forward, some of these funds are going to be allocated to helping prepare our health systems for a potential second round of COVID-19, as well as for supplies and our human capital, which was also hit very hard due to the financial implications of the pandemic. Our health system, like so many others throughout the state, saw layoffs of staff that we'd never expect to see go during a global health pandemic. These layoffs not only affected our program, but talking with some of the people who were let go, I can see how the impact is definitely going to affect our community as a whole. One coworker that I talked to in particular about the type of degree that they hold said they weren't going to be able to find another job in Grand Forks, so they were going to have to look elsewhere. These types of situations, I can only imagine, aren't isolated encounters. When this happens again and again, where employees lose their jobs and have hours cut, our economy is surely going to feel those impacts. This crisis has shown how truly flawed our health system is. Funding should be allocated also to health systems to help improve their functionality, especially in cases of turmoil, and to ensure that other jobs won't be lost during another round. This could include development of more remote care services such as telehealth visit capabilities, which would ensure patients get to see their providers and reduce the spread of further COVID. While I understand these issues surrounding the state, there's North Dakotans who are in need of basic items like food, shelter, and clothing, which I agree really need to come first. I do want to make it clear that in the coming months, we might be faced with even a harder economic impact and hits to the healthcare system that need to be handled, as well as some of the others. So, all right, that's what I've got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Adriana. Agree 100%. And our next speaker is Leslie. Sorry, I should say Leslie.
Hello.
There you go.
Hello, my name is Leslie Ross, and thank you, Dr. Shelley, for allowing me to participate, although I am talking, so it's really not a listening session for me at this point. It will be, though.
I'm listening. We're all listening, and we're going to bring this to our legislatures and lift up everybody's voice.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I am running for a local election. I am running for Stark County Commissioner. And I'm actually on today to talk about the effects of COVID based on our veteran population in the state of North Dakota. I am a VA accredited claims agent and former county veteran service officer and a disabled vet myself. And what I find is that Adriana said a lot of things that are completely similar, obviously, to veterans. You know, veterans are more susceptible to COVID than probably a majority of the population because of comorbidities, age and vulnerabilities that they have. You know, our biggest veteran population are Vietnam veterans, so they've already had Agent Orange and toxin excuse me, exposure.
Yep.
And our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans also, they've had more toxin exposures than anyone. They've had the oil fires, the burn pits, you name it. They have been subjected to that. So respiratory wise, they are certainly susceptible. And what has happened with COVID is access to healthcare. Our aging population requires and is vulnerable because they cannot go from point A to point B to an appointment. And so there's, you know, that in essence is a real big issue. So, and the third big thing here is that we have so many veterans in the state of North Dakota who suffer from some mental health crisis. PTSD, it doesn't matter. And I know that that's the same with the majority of the population. We all have some issues. However, just in March alone, they had an increase on the veteran suicide hotline of 12%. It is now at 20%. And I can't say how that breaks out for the state of North Dakota. However, we kind of follow the national average as well. You know, we still are averaging around 22 suicides a day, and that's just unacceptable.
Absolutely.
So you can understand COVID, you know, the comorbidity of a mental health issue certainly is exasperated in people who are very sound, having had to stay at home. So you can understand how incredibly disabling that is for a veteran as well. The other aspect is that this has a detriment to our homeless veterans. Not only are they underserviced, but they are probably more susceptible to COVID because of the conditions of life. And so what are we doing as a state to reach out and ensure those veterans are taken care of? And also a couple of other things are the delayed benefits. So we've had several veterans die in the state of North Dakota. Mm-hmm. Well, they are leaving survivors behind as well. Not only is it a tragedy that the veteran has passed on, but their beneficiary are not getting the survivor benefits in a timely way. So now they are without an income from the deceased. they are waiting and paying for funerals and all that's associated with that. The delay because the VA no longer is they're working from home. So the benefit they absolutely need to get by, they're not getting that either. And they're also probably out of work because of COVID or at home isolated. So it's like the trifecta.
I know.
And then other issue I think that we need to understand is that a lot of the entrepreneurs in the state of North Dakota are veterans. Veterans are just like, they just jump in with both feet and they create small businesses. And yes, the Small Business Administration is doing loans and grants, but it's so labor intensive. We need to find a way to mainstream that and make it easier, or have some teams out there talking to veterans, or some mobile team of people in all avenues to help and create some opportunity for veterans to access and increase their ability to access care and money to compensate them on the COVID aspect of losing money for business. I am a small business owner myself, so I understand that, you know, I can't meet my clients in person either. And of course, all of you that are on here that are running for office know how hard it was to get 300 signatures.
Yeah.
You can't talk to people. You can't be with people. So we all understand we're kind of all in the same boat. So thank you, Dr. Shelley. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for that really deep understanding and advocacy for our veterans.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker is Birgit Pruis. I hope I said that last name right. Birgit? We will just get her going there in 2 seconds. Okay, just a second. I think my campaign manager is getting a lot of stuff going on. Let me just try to, let's see. Melissa, can you unmute and bring Birgit up?
Birgit has to do it on her end, but if you want to just maybe skip to the next person, we can come back to Birgit when she
Okay, Birgit, I'll come right back to you, okay? Our next speaker is Ann Hafner.
Can you hear me?
There we go. We can.
I did it.
You, my fellow Kilderian. Go ahead, Ann.
Did you want me to? Are we ready to go?
You're ready to go. Go ahead. You got your 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm in the ambulance, so you're getting the background noise here. Let me tell you, I apologize.
No, it's real life. It's all
okay. Sorry, Pam. Nothing like realism, is there?
right. Well, I know you guys have been understaffed and overstressed, so thank you for your
A little bit of both. My name's Ann Havner, and I'm a paramedic and the manager of Kildare Area Ambulance. Give you a little bit about rural ambulance services in North Dakota. There's 141 ambulance services, transporting ambulance services in North Dakota. And of the 141, 128 of them are rural ambulance services. In some parts of the state, the rural ambulance service is the only medical care that's available. Most of our state is medically underserved. You probably know that already by federal standards. We've learned how to function with a lot of isolation, a long way from the hospital, with volunteer crew members. It's consistently getting harder and harder to continue functioning like that. COVID has added a whole different level of stress and anxiety to what we deal with every day. Statewide, and people are avoiding going to places where they're going to be exposed to COVID, as you know, like hospitals and clinics. And the ambulance requests are down. I talked to the state health department this afternoon. About 30% overall the state. Hey, it's good. People don't need ambulances so much. They're down. The problem with that is that most insurance companies only pay us if we actually take the patient to the hospital. So when we have 30% fewer 911 calls, we have 30% less reimbursement from insurance companies. So our calls are down, but if you're one of the people that actually calls us, you want us to be here. And if we can't be here because we don't have that revenue, then that's a real big problem. The people that do call 911, the severity of the calls is increased. Instead of them, they wait at home until they're really, really sick. So they're really stressful calls. As people have been isolating and the unemployment and the regular stressors, it's actually changed the calls that we take. We don't have so many, I fell off the porch and broke my arm. We have domestic violence. We have alcohol and drug-related calls. We have people who are assaulted. During the COVID crisis, during the first month of the crisis, we had two different assaults against ambulance crew members. Oh. Because of the stress that's been placed on the community. You know, the community members are stressed and they're acting out. Since January, and I went back and pulled last year's budget, since January, from January 1st to June 1st, Kildare Ambulance has spent 5 times more on personal protective equipment, including gowns, masks, I'm sorry, not just personal protective equipment, consumables, patient consumables. So it would be the oxygen tubing we use, the IV supplies we use, the bandages we use, then adding in the N95 masks, the surgical masks, the gowns, the gloves, 5 times the budget that we spent last year. The suppliers we usually use are prioritizing to New York and Los Angeles and, you know, some of the bigger cities. And so things are back ordered. So then we have to go over and buy from people we don't have contracts with in order to get the personal protective equipment. So our expenses are much greater.
Wow.
Kildare is lucky in ambulance service, rural ambulance services, and we're an ambulance taxing district. So we provide the service that our taxpayers can afford and that they want to have. And we do extra things to supplement our income. We teach CPR to some of the industries. We do standbys for rodeos and football games and things to supplement our budget. And COVID has basically cut all that out too. You know, we can't really have CPR classes for 30 people when we can't be within 6 feet of each other. I don't want it to sound like the ambulance services aren't making it, because we are, and we're going to keep doing what we need to do. We're going to keep taking care of our community because they're our families. But it's been really, really difficult making up the budget losses that we've lost from the extra expenses, from the employees we've had that are medically fragile themselves, and so they can't work on the service because they have to protect themselves. The people that don't have childcare. So we're working overtime and we're very stressed. We always look for funding sources. We're going to continue to research and do everything that we can, but money like the money that I believe is available through the CARES Act would go a long way for Kildare Ambulance and the other rural ambulance services in making up some of those huge losses and extra expenses we've had as a result of the crisis.
Excellent, excellent summary, and thanks for enlightening us a little bit more about what it's like to run an ambulance service. Okay, thank you, Anne. Our next up is Bridget. Bridget.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Yes, I'm glad I have it figured out. Okay, and I turned the video on too, so maybe you can even see me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm a faculty at one of our institutions here, and I was for a while the faculty member on the State Board of Higher Education. I do want to make the point, I'm not representing anybody right now, I'm voicing my own personal opinion.
Thank you.
I do think that higher ed needs help. We don't know what enrollment is going to be, and even if it stays steady, there are additional expenses. We are opening campuses, but that doesn't mean nothing is going to be taught online, and we would like to do a better job at that than the emergency thing that we did in spring. I do believe our institutions have turned in grants and are waiting for decisions next week. And I'm hoping that as many as possible of those are going to be considered positive. A lot of that is for electronics, for better online teaching. Of course, there's personal protective equipment as well. If all the students and all the staff and all the faculty are supposed to be wearing face coverings, they call that, masks. Do we really want the students to pay for them? I hope not. So I'm also wondering whether the students could help, maybe get a little help with tuition. And another thing that came up, we are supposed to do testing, which is important for us, but also for the community, so that any kind of developing hotspot gets detected immediately. And of course, somebody will have to fund that too. So electronics, personal protective equipment, and testing is what I would look for here in this situation. And thanks for holding the session. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for participating, Bridget, and thank you for doing what you do. Thank you. Anything else, or is that good? Good?
Nope, that would be it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Carol Davies. Okay, so we will see. Carol, are you on and unmuted? So I think you have to unmute yourself.
I think we might have lost Carol, but I think Diane McClure was up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Diane McClure then.
Yes, I'm here ready to go. It's like we do have a healthcare theme going on, and I'm Dr. Diane McClure, and so I'm sitting here in California, but I am an associate professor at Western University of Health Sciences and the Veterinary College. And so Dr. Shelley and I have woven cross paths in the past, but I'm also been involved with the Western Interstate Consortium for Healthcare Education. And we've been participating in Western states from North Dakota over to Alaska to participate in educating and creating those resources. So I'm here today because I really am invested in both preparing those resources to provide those rural medicine, telehealth medicine skills, and this CARES Act will have provider fund relief. And in fact, I wanted to make sure, I've been doing some background on that. There will be a what do they call it? A webinar, a webcast to show how to do the applications. And those are coming up on June 23rd and 25th. So there will be a very rapid turnaround on application processes. So appropriate folks need to be aware of when that ends. Some of these turnarounds on the previous funding agencies have had as short as a 48-hour turnaround. So getting on board and making sure those applications and those grant processes get in. And I would imagine that probably ambulance drivers, but also we need to keep the healthcare workers that are in those locations ready to serve, because they're needed right now. We're just having a glitch and a distribution disruption. So we don't want to lose those resources. It also then goes to healthcare education for providers. Right. And so there are funds. It's a little bit more confusing on the CARES Act and the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. There are funds for students, and their website, I have to tell you, is really crazy jumbled. It's got like red and blue and different colors, like they're changing their mind every minute. I'm not sure. The unofficial copies where they are on this is on the government website. So I'm like, oh my God, sorry. This is like, because a piece of this is being able to connect those people who need it with getting that access, like getting the stimulus money to the people who need it. And I'm seeing it's going to be a challenge. There's going to be money for students, but making sure that they know how to get to it, and those in higher ed. In higher ed, there will be another conference for folks in higher ed on June 24th as well, to try to get up to speed on how to get that money. So even if the powers that be, we don't want anybody in healthcare in our Western states to miss out on any of this opportunity. And so we're supporting this. So we've been doing a Western, been involved with WICHE for more than a decade.
Right.
So that's, and this is multiple on our campus. From ophthalmology, actually has the most students in it right now, and others, not just veterinary medicine, but our campus is all healthcare, podiatric medicine, dental medicine, almost all the medicine except for, I don't know why we don't have mental health, but we need that definitely in there right now. So there's going to be a lot of need, but it's going to be boots on the ground to make sure not only that that it gets to the places it needs to do. So I applaud you, Dr. Shelley. Thank you for having us on for this listening session. so we can get ahead of the game, make sure that we get all of us access to the funds that have been made available for everybody on the West.
All right, thank you, Dr. McClure, and I appreciate those comments. The next will be Beth Madeline.
Hi, thanks, Dr. Shelley. I appreciate this. I am not in the medical field, but I will share mine. I'm a small business owner and based out of Bismarck. I own a number of companies, and I'm a landlord of some tenants in a building as well. My company we do environmental work and archaeology especially, and so we're kind of a seasonal business in North Dakota, and we've been impacted not only by the COVID-19 but also by what's happening in the oil and energy industry.
Right.
So that has a pretty profound effect on what our work. We had been in business as well during the 9/11 attacks, and our industry kind of seized up for quite some time. So we were kind of, like everyone, panicked at the beginning of this. And so we did apply for and get PPP funding. And we had so much help. We're so grateful. We had a lot of help from our bankers, our small local bankers, and SBA and the regional development corporations. I think what was hard for us, or what it still is the PPP funding was really attractive because it had the potential of being forgiven. And so we could pay salaries of employees and not have to put them on unemployment. And because so many in North Dakota were really quick out of the gate, we're done now. We basically had to have that spent before that 8-week period was up, and the extension didn't happen until just before 3 days before our time period was up. So we had it spent. And so now the question is, now what? And because we didn't know how long this would last, we also applied for and received an EIDL grant, an EIDL loan. So now we're debating, because it's additional debt, which we didn't need at the time. But basically now, if this goes on and we have another wave in the fall, we're just going to sit on this and wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, now we're just getting back out into the field. I think there's a lot of entities like us that are support services in the energy and manufacturing and transportation and infrastructure industries, where we're just getting back out now, and we're having to deal with how do we put employees into field vehicles, where do they stay. Our employees want to stay in tents this year.
Oh wow.
And which isn't going to be great come August when it's hot. So we're kind of just stumbling along trying to figure out how to make this work. We are business to business. We don't have a front-facing street, a street side or a way for people to buy gift certificates to support us. I mean, there's a lot like us who are not, who are just kind of on our own trying to muddle through this. And I guess the remainder of my time I'd like to talk about is I'm also a parent of a child with special needs. Oh. And this has been extremely difficult. My child has an intellectual disability, and I think 4 or 5 recent studies have shown that children with intellectual disabilities, if they get COVID-19, it's 16 times more lethal for them. And so we have been shut down and not exposing ourselves in any way. And what this has done is we are one of the families that has had to say we cannot have respite workers in our home.
Right.
We don't feel safe having our child in any kind of a summer program or school program. And so 60 days from now, when school starts up again, I don't know what we're going to do. So, we need our special education program to be working for our families in ways that it wasn't exactly very successful for us in the spring. But I don't know. So the messaging for us, I guess, that we hope that this money comes to help is with the kind of vulnerable populations. And I guess more importantly is the mixed messaging about social distancing is really hard for us because we can't, it takes more than one small family unit to raise children with disabilities and children who are vulnerable. And we can't do it staying in our house forever. And so we need our communities to be safe too, so that we can get out with other people too. So I know everything's opening up, but it doesn't, we can't risk it.
Right.
So we're shut down and doing what we can do. So anyway, that's my ask is that it be spent on helping the people that are most needy and helping or keeping in mind the behind the scenes business to business community as well.
Okay. Thank you, Beth, for that double whammy. You forget that not only are you a small business owner suffering, but the family, you also run a family. And so we're all with you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Our next speaker is Mr. Nick Murphy.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear, and we can see you too.
Okay, good. My name is Nick Murphy. I'm the union business representative for Local 10 sheet metal workers for North Dakota. I pretty much came to talk about the construction industry and the safety of the construction industry today. What maybe things could be done better. As maybe some of you know, construction was essential during COVID. So my guys, members, and other union trades, their members were out working throughout this. Being in congested construction sites, probably not in the best situations. It's been a difficult thing for a lot of guys to try to figure out the correct way to do things and still do your job. Right. Some job sites that I've been seeing, we just finally started getting like temperature checks on job sites, PPE for face masks and just even screening just to kind of figure out if they have any cases or not. Some of the guys, you can't work the social distancing. It's impossible. So the guys are not being able to social distance. Some of them are traveling and sharing hotel rooms. So our construction industry has been very temperamental. Even from our service industry, going into people's homes, going into commercial sites, you don't know what you're walking into. So it's been a big thing for us. I would really like to see something done with the construction industry to make things better. I've looked at other states and what they're doing with the construction industry, and it seems to be a little more proactive, really laxed here. I just found out today up in mine at a job site, they've had not one but 2 COVID cases on site, and they're still working on that site. It is not shut down yet. I feel they should shut it down and clean it. But that's not up to me. It's up to the superintendent. I'm sure they're under a deadline, and that seems to be more important in people's lives. So that's kind of the battles that we see every day in and day out. We have programs that we try to do with our membership to try to help them, along with the CARES Act, to do what we feel is best for the membership and try to help them so they don't have to be forced to work in unsafe conditions. Just one statistic too, I've maybe some of you know, but North Dakota is #1 out of the last 5 out of 7 years in job site fatalities. So we lead the country in job site fatalities last 5 out of 7 years. Between the oil field, construction, and ag, combined, we lead the country in that. And that's something none of us should be proud of. There's just such a relaxed in that. So I guess that's all I have to talk about. I could ramble on about other things, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for that insight, and thank you for trying to keep your workers safe. And we definitely feel that out in Western North Dakota here, the fatalities. And so, okay, thank you. Our next is going to be Dr. Carol Davies. Let's see if we can get her on again here. I'll give you like a few seconds here, and sometimes we might be having technical difficulties. Dr. Carol Davies? Okay, so Dr. Carol, just let us know when you're back on. I know that we're having some technical difficulties with you, But how about the next would be Mr. Scott Shively. Hey, Ben Tucker, can you mute yourself, please? Scott Shively.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we are, and we can see you as well. Can you see us?
Yes, I've had some technical difficulties. I found out my computer didn't have a microphone, so it's probably a good thing because I spend most of my time cussing at it. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. The beef industry has been in a crisis for the last 4 or 5 years, but really gotten a lot worse. The 2019 calf crop never did find the market. The packing house fire in September derailed the market, probably not for any real good reason because it didn't really slow things down, but they knocked down the price they're paying for cattle by 20 cents going in the front door and raised the price going out the back door to consumers. One thing that Dr. Lenz has talked about is the need for smaller packing and packing in North Dakota. The industry is controlled by 4 major packers that control 85%. 2 of those are multinationals, and the other 2 are actually owned primarily by Brazilian companies. So they basically control what we get for all of our cattle. So I think that if some of this money would be made available to cattlemen or to people interested in the packing industry, there's a lot of need. Farmers Union of North Dakota and Farmers Union of South Dakota are trying to buy a big packing plant in Aberdeen, and I think that would be a good place for North Dakota to spend some money to help them pull that off if that is possible. But I think, we also have a severe need in this state for some smaller packing facilities that would serve our local communities. So I think it's not, a lot of our problems are federal, but this is certainly something that the state could do to help out.
Very good. All right, Scott, thank you very much for speaking up for the cattlemen.
Welcome. Thank you.
And the importance of food security that we're seeing those.
Absolutely. We found out that our food system is really pretty insecure.
It is. Okay. All right. So everybody, thank you for that input. The next person will be Tim Mathern, Senator Tim Mathern from Fargo. Tim?
There, I got unmuted. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, I've been in the Senate for some years, and I think I've probably been to everybody's community that is on this call this evening. I guess what I want to say is I appreciate that Dr. Shelley Lentz has opened this discussion. I sit on the budget section, which means I hear the report from the Emergency Commission, and then we have a vote about how to spend this $1.25 billion. It's just an up and down vote. There aren't any negotiations or amendments. And so a list is provided that the governor comes up with and a few legislators, and you vote either yes or no. But what I find interesting in listening to you all this evening is I believe there's probably a place in all of that money that's being spent for these individual situations, but there is no process to really make sure. Like there's a big category, Department of Health. so many millions of dollars. Well, I'm not quite sure if that means so many dollars goes to kill deer and other emergency ambulance services to make sure we supply and fulfill their needs in terms of materials. We have a big appropriation that goes into the Department of Human Services, but it's not clear enough. Now, does it get to the family with a special needs child who might say, I don't want people coming into my house because it's endangering my child's health? And I think that's one of the problems we have in our system. When you don't have hearings and you don't have citizen input, you don't really know for sure if this chunk is going to the individuals that are being brought up in this meeting this evening. I've gotten some great ideas, and what I'm going to do when I get Shelley's report, I'm going to actually bring it to the budget section.
Great, thank you, thank you.
And I'll say, well, okay, if this or that, is this in here or not? And that would be very helpful to me. I guess the other thing I wanted to say is we have a situation where, you know, everybody on this call, with the exception of the professor from California, has 3 legislators.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we each have a senator and we each have 2 House members that represent us. And if you don't know who those people are, I would suggest you call your county auditor and ask. You just give your address, or you call the Secretary of State's office, give your address. You'll find out who your legislators are.
Mm-hmm.
And give them a call. I mean, we get paid to serve as a legislature. And frankly, if we're not going to have a special session, we are at home and we are getting some pay. So don't feel like you can't call these people.
Right.
They are your representatives and they are getting reimbursed. So go for it. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to the report.
Thank you, Senator, and I really appreciate everything you've done, but also pointing out that the legislature is actually there for you. And I have found that you just call them up and they'll respond, hopefully. Otherwise, then maybe you need to change that in November. So, okay. Our next, just want to note that the floor is opened up to all speakers. And the next one, if you wanted to add anything, the next one in line is Jody Mish. If I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right.
Thank you, Dr. Shelley, and thank you, Melissa, for facilitating. My name is Jody Mish, and I am actually a candidate for the House of Representatives in District 22. And I apologize if this has already been brought up, but one big concern that I had during this COVID-19 crisis was lack of payroll protection for high-risk employees. And I hope I'm wrong here. I've been trying to find resources and have come up empty-handed, so I hope somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But a personal situation, my boyfriend is high risk and likely would not survive a case of coronavirus. His employer did not shut down, and he elected to stay home because it was either, and they actually had an outbreak. They had 9 cases at his work, and so he had to choose go to work and risk his life or stay home and not get paid, because when you're electing to stay home, you don't qualify for unemployment benefits. Yeah. And so securing payroll protection for those individuals that are not able to work without risking their life, but not able to collect unemployment, I know that there's so many deserving causes and ways to allocate this money. I don't envy anybody that's trying to decide who's getting what chunk in this. The pie is going to run out very quickly. But yeah, that would be my case, is just making sure that those individuals that don't want to die to go to work don't have to sacrifice their entire paycheck for months on end.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight, Jody, and reminding us, you know, you're young and healthy, but that doesn't mean that you don't have family members that are very, very vulnerable. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Next in line, we have Dr. Alan Peterson. Alan?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me talk. I am a candidate for District 26, House of Representatives. I happened to serve in the legislature 30 years ago for District 25, which is out of Wauketon. So I know a little bit about the process.
Yep.
In the last 10 years, I was the director of the Center for Distance Ed, which is the online school for North Dakota. So I know what it's like to testify in front of the budget section. I would say this to you, all of you, that, and I can be corrected, but Tim, Senator Mathern, kind of reminded me of this, is that the legislature works pretty well when it's in session, because it doesn't make stuff up. And I mean in session, not just during that 80 days, it's when they have hearings, you know, I mean, those are held very well. But it takes a lot of time to get a lot of people to know exactly what you need. And I know from trying to get money for the Center for Distance Ed, it was very horribly underfunded at one point, but now it's funded. But it took a lot of work and a lot of processing. And I would say to you this, that a lot of leaders forget that leaders are only supposed to do two things. One is assign authority, and second is provide resources. If there is a third thing, it is priorities. Everything is important, but some things are critical. And what I heard tonight so far, there's some critical things that are being missed. And that means that people are going to die. I can't, even in industry, and I work a great deal with manufacturing people, when they put a supply, when you're designing something, everything is important when you design something on an airplane, for instance. But there are some things that are hyper critical, and those are always communicated to everybody, because you can't miss those. But it takes multifunctional teams. It takes a lot of hearings to get to that. So that's what I wanted to let you know. Legislature works very well, I think, when it's in session. And I would think that this is one of those times that it should be in a special session. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Peterson. Next will be Dr. Carol Davies. We'll see if we got the technical issues figured out by that. Carol? I'm going to just keep talking a little bit until I make sure that I've given you a few seconds to deal with that. We will do Dr. Carol, and then after that we have Richard Rockefeller afterwards. So let's see if Carol get on here. A few more seconds. And of course, Carol, you can, if we don't get the technical issues worked out, you can email us and we'll definitely include that in our written response to the governor and all our representatives. And then of course, everybody that is at this meeting, we have your emails and we'll give you that recap. So, okay.
Carol's off mute. Carol, are you speaking? We can't hear you if you are. So maybe a tech issue on your end. I'm going to message with Carol so we can go ahead and move on to Richard.
Okay, you let me know, Melissa. So the next speaker will be Richard Rockefeller. Richard?
Good evening. I would just like to first of all thank Senator Mathern, Dr. Shelley Lenz, and all that have been working so hard. You all spark joy.
Thank you.
I've been glad to sit here and listen this evening. I appreciate, I want to piggyback both on Dr. Alan Peterson and Senator Mathern. Senator Mathern is the only one who offered so far a call to action. And I would like to reiterate that call in this way, and that some of you may have Republican representatives in the legislature. Please reach out to them, even if they're not of the same party that you may belong to. Please, through email and or phone calls. I think that, you know, the state of Michigan, the only way the state of Michigan was called into special session, even at a higher level of the COVID, was the people, the citizenry.
Right.
They demanded a special session.
Right.
So I would encourage everyone here, there are 55, at one point there were 55 people here. If we all e-march, electronic march, on the governor's office and encourage at least 2 or 3 of our friends and family, regardless of party, to do the same, you know, we would be putting that pressure. I don't think, and this pressure needs to come because it needs to back these good people like yourself, Dr. Shelley, and Senator Mathern, that have been doing this good work and that will do this good work when you're put into office.
Thank you.
Dr. Shelley. So I want to amplify that call to action because it is so necessary, and we can do it in a just way, but just flood their email, flood their phone, because some of them take a privilege of not returning calls. I've experienced that lately, and it's not appreciated. Whereas others are very wonderful, and I experience that across party. I will say across both parties.
Right. 100%.
So that, with that said, we need to end. I thank everyone here, and I want to be optimistic, but it's going to take us, a branch of the government, the citizenry, to put pressure on at this point, I believe. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And that is democracy. Our representatives just need to respond to your requests.
What they're doing right now is anti-democracy. Right. And we need to frame it that way.
Yeah, and my representatives are normally very, very responsive, and just reach out. Okay, so next will be Tracy Wilkie, and then we'll go back to Dr. Carol. Tracy Wilkie?
Bonjour, I'm Tracy Wilkie. I'm a candidate for District 16 House. Please watch out for my running mates and I, Hamida Dakani and Carrie Brecker. I've been doing a lot of thinking about like this coming together for another session. I'm not in there yet, but I know it's important to have a more diverse voice in there, you know, partisan, non-partisan league, everybody. I'm concerned about our new American population and, you know, people, you know, with domestic violence and homelessness and people, you know, having problems with paying their property taxes, because I know how like living a paycheck to paycheck affects people, and you know the COVID-19, that's a recovery process for a lot of people, and I think District 16 are affected by it too. And you know, of course, I was raised on the reservation, so I worry about my people, and Dr. Carol Davies was one of my childhood mentors. It was her teachings who got me through my darkest of times. So it's an honor that she's here tonight. Yes, and on that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Carol Davies.
Thank you, Tracy. And Dr. Carol Davies, did you get your technical issues worked out now? We're all awaiting you. I can't hear you. I can hear like something very faint in the back, and Melissa's gonna stop on again one more time and see what we got there.
We thought we troubleshooted, but I don't think that we were successful. So Dr. Carol said she's going to email us her comments. Sorry,
Okay.
Carol, that we couldn't figure that out, but thanks for being here.
And then Dr. Carol, we'll do a special interview, a little homegrown stories or something. Okay, so we're going to have our last speaker. We want to wrap this up, and it will be Leticia Hellerud. And we'll give, is she on there? Oh, and also Melissa is frozen. Oh my gosh. Leticia? Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Ah, now we can. There you go. Beautiful. We can't see you. I'm not sure if you don't have your video on, but you're such a beautiful woman. We'd love to see your face.
All right, if you insist, I'll do it.
I insist.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see me now?
There we go. Look at that.
All right. Thank you.
You bring joy too.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Shelley, for hosting this listening session. Yeah, as you said, my name is Leticia Hellerud, and I'm a Senate candidate for District 22. And one concern that has not been brought up, actually, Tracy Wilkie mentioned it in passing, is a concern with the new Americans. And it portrays pertains to education support. So with COVID-19 and the subsequent remote schooling, some families were not equipped to provide the home support that their children needed. So in the school district might have helped with the electronic devices that were needed for the students, as well as in some cases, the internet connection that some families could not afford. What was missing, however, is that the fact that some families were not in a good place to engage academically their children. And some of them, many of them don't read or write in their own languages. They would not be able to guide their students with with this new system that was challenging even for mainstream parents.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there is a way to consider mentoring programs, like paid mentors, to follow these students, because we know that we are already starting from a place of disparities with these families. And education is definitely foundational in terms of breaking or closing those gaps. So I really would like these families not to rely on volunteers or friends who can help them navigate these new unknowns. I don't know what the fall is going to look like.
Right.
I think it's good to be proactive. Absolutely. And plan for situations like this if they were to happen. But even looking back, or if there is anything that we can do for the summer to kind of catch up these students and to get them ready for the fall. I just wanted to bring this because it's something that kept coming from new American families, but I'm also going to echo Tracy Wilkie with the families with the disabilities, mental disabilities especially, or learning disabilities, like parents, like providing that kind of support where these students are not left to vent for themselves, or where they are considered to be on equal footing as everyone else navigating this. So that's my contribution tonight.
Thank you, 100%. So that's all the time we have for some speakers. We have some other ones that are wanting to speak, but we will take those written comments. So that brings us to the end of tonight's listening session. But this is just the beginning of my and our efforts to ensure that our government works for all of us. I'm more inspired every day listening to local problem solvers. You know how to solve the problems in your own community. To do that, we need decisive leadership that will unite all North Dakotans and listen to the needs of all communities. As governor, I will be decisive, collaborative, and transparent. We will be preparing a summary of this session and delivering it to the governor, the legislature, and the press, and to each of you, so we can stay connected and understand the deeper problems in each of our communities. Together, I believe that we can get through these challenging times to help each other. I hope I can count on your support to help bring a practical and responsive voice to the governor's office. Please visit www.lens-big-for-north-dakota.com to make a contribution or learn more about me and my Lieutenant Governor Ben Big, or to get involved and let me hear your voice. In addition, if you'd like to host a listening session in your own community or virtually, I would love to continue this discussion. Please contact info@lens-big-for-nd.com to make those arrangements, and we can take deeper dives into each of those community needs. So once again, thank you for attending, for speaking, for listening, and mostly for sharing our pride in our great state and being good neighbors. Let's keep the conversation going, and we'll win. Thank you.